So here is UNESCO from the multilateral intergovernmental organizations working with a leading private sector company, Nokia, on this important topic of AI and digital transformation with a focus on civil servants and policymakers. So it has been also a pleasure for us at UNESCO working with you over the past 12 months. I am here with my colleague, Davide Storti, seated to my left, and I'm going to highlight or summarize the major outcomes coming from the working group, and my colleague will show some slides along the way, and of course we'll make available to you a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. So first of all, why this topic, which we proposed last summer? Why this topic of AI competency framework for digital transformation in the public sector? I think the key question that we try to answer is, what are these competencies needed by public sector officials, civil servants, policymakers, in order to enhance national digital transformation efforts? I think undoubtedly today, digital transformation is not a must for the private sector only. We talk quite often about digital business transformation, but also, of course, there is a need for digital public transformation. And that's the focus of our work. So what competencies are needed? What are the challenges? What are the barriers? And how can we advise, how can we accompany, in the case of UNESCO, our member states in succeeding through AI and digital transformation through a set of competencies? First of all, I would like here to mention a piece of work of UNESCO, and because the question is, where are we coming from? We are not starting with a blank sheet of paper. A number of years ago, UNESCO recommended a piece of work that I think have been used right and left, which is called the Rome Principles, R-O-A-M, the Rome Principles. What are these, and what does this abbreviation of Rome, what does it mean? So we believe that in order to succeed in digital technology-based systems, applications, transformation, we need to very much be respectful of human rights. So the R in Rome stands for human rights, the R of rights. The O is open, the A is accessible, and the M is multi-stakeholder. So we have been preaching, let's say, and recommending that any effort that leverages digital capacities should be a human-centric, respectful of rights, of human rights, should be open to all in an inclusive way, accessible by all, and very much follow a multi-stakeholder approach. So the multi-stakeholder makes sense not only for us, because we have 193 member states at the UN, at UNESCO, but also because we have other key stakeholders, including the private sector, the technology companies, but also civil society, NGOs, academia, research institutions. So we believe that to sustain what we do with digital, we better follow this inclusive multi-stakeholder approach, respectful of human rights. So this is our starting point. And by the way, you may say, okay, nice principles, but what does it mean in practice? In practice, at UNESCO, we developed over 300 indicators that countries can use to do a national digital assessment. Where are you in the digital landscape within your country based on these exactly 303 indicators, which represent this Rome approach of ours. And I am pleased to say that so far 40 countries, 40 countries have adopted the Rome Principles of UNESCO and these indicators and have carried out a national digital assessment, the output of which are meant to inform policymakers, are meant hopefully to guide, to inspire top-level civil servants in coming up with their digital strategy and digital transformation approach. So that is the starting point. Today, of course, nobody can deny the increasing importance of an emerging technology called artificial intelligence. And today, many, if not most, digital transformation efforts try also to leverage AI capabilities. You may know that this past November, the UNESCO General Conference has adopted a unique normative instrument, which is called the Ethics of AI Recommendations of UNESCO. We believe this is the first instrument of its kind worldwide. We believe it's very important because when I talk about a human rights based, of course, that also refers to an ethical use of artificial intelligence, respectful of gender, respectful of many divides that we have in societies or many issues that we have in society. So the ethics of AI recommendation is also another piece of work that obviously we have to take into account. Now, let me focus on the outcome of our work. So we see on the slide, first of all, the question I mentioned, number two, and that's in a way the structure of my presentation. Yes, I will first mention the key challenges. Then what are the competencies that we came up with and that we recommend? And finally, recommendations for actions that we suggest. Let me start with the three key challenges to AI capacity building, which we believe are very important for any digital transformation initiative undertaken in the public sector. The first challenge, cultural and organizational barriers. So again, we all know, and here I'm looking at people around the table, some leading executives, managers from the technology sector. You know, technology is quite easy to acquire. We can buy it overnight. But of course, we cannot change the corporate culture overnight. We cannot change people's mindset overnight. So we see the organizational issue. It's not the system that has, it's not the organization that has to adapt itself to a system. It's a system that has to take into account the specificities of the organizational setup. Quite often, it works the other way around. We acquire a piece of software, we acquire a package, we put it there, and we see sometimes some dysfunctionality or not complete fit with the organization itself and the corporate culture. So we see here, again, this is the first key challenge that we see. In addition to the aversion to experimentation or to exploration, digital transformation is first and foremost a major innovation project. Why? Because there is a word transformation in it. You cannot transform if you don't innovate, because then you end up doing the same thing. So if you want to transform, it means that you come up with a different and a better way of running your business, running your organization. So the key word in digital transformation is transformation that leverages digital capacities. This is not IT transformation. Quite often there is this confusion. Digital transformation is not IT transformation. It's transformation of the organization of processes thanks to digital capabilities. And therefore, innovation is key here, but innovation that creates value for the stakeholders, for the users, for the recipients. Otherwise, innovation has no meaning. What is the new value proposition that you are coming up with that did not exist before, that makes our work better, faster, more efficient, more effective? So that's why I'm stressing innovation, because innovation requires experimentation, requires exploration, which means, again, there is a certain success factor here or success rate. Are we willing to fail? Do we accept failure as a way of learning? If we are averse to failure, then we cannot innovate. Innovation does not equate success 100% of the times. We hope to succeed. We do succeed sometimes, but also we do fail some other times. But what is a failure? A failure is not to fall. A failure is to fall and to rebound, to learn from that failed experiment, and hopefully to do it again in a better informed way until we get it right. So I'm taking a few minutes because for me, that's the most important challenge, and that's why it appears as number one. And of course, leadership. Leadership, I'm not talking about middle level leadership. I am talking about leadership from the top of the organization. I talk about the CEO, I talk about the executive committee, or I talk about ministers, key policy makers in government, in public administration. This is not something to be dealt with by an IT director, with all my respect to IT directors. This is something that goes way beyond the IT organization or department. This spans the whole organization and impacts the way that organization delivers value. So that's why leadership has to be from the highest possible level and has to be throughout, not just to approve a digital transformation project and say, come back in 6 months, in 1 year, show us what you got. Well, to be involved on a continuous basis to support. Why? Because any digital transformation will meet resistance to the change. There are the skeptical people. There are those who don't believe in it. How can you reassure? How can you convince? There is only one CEO in a business company. There is only one minister or one prime minister in government. If there is a strong, clear message coming from the top, hopefully that will align the troops. Hopefully that will pull everybody in the same direction. But if you delegate to level 2, 3, or 4, well, with all my respect, there are many VPs, there are many heads of departments in any organization. And then, of course, that invites different views and some divergence and some weakening of the overall message. Data and infrastructure barrier. Of course, if we don't have the data, if we don't have the proper digital infrastructure, how can we implement? How can we deploy? How can we deliver? We said it's digital capability enabled digital transformation. Do we have the digital capabilities? And that's not only hardware and software. We know to what extent data has become a key corporate or organizational resource nowadays. What's the quality of that data? How extensive is it? How detailed can it be, etc. And thirdly, of course, the capacity building, the human resource capacity building, in order to bridge this competency gap that we see between those who are technology savvy, those who are not technology savvy, those who are up to date, those who are lagging behind. Of course, we cannot afford different speeds of knowledge. I'm not saying that everybody should become an expert in IT. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the level of awareness so people can know how to properly use and have the minimum skill set required to properly use the infrastructure and deliver. So we see here one of the issues, the data analysis, but beyond, also AI specific skills as well. Maybe you can, and the last point, adaptation to the specific, unique organizational setting. Of course, there is no one size fits all. A software can lend itself to many organizations, but still there is a minimum need to adjust, to tailor that solution, that approach to the cultural, organizational specificities of a given infrastructure. So this takes us to the next slide, which is about the competency domains. So we see here again, first of all, the planning and design level. We advocate system thinking. This is one of the approaches, of course, that we can use to identify requirements, to come up with, to have a better understanding of the problem at hand and the specificities and the requirements needed towards a solution. But again, you see the strategic foresight. We cannot do digital transformation for today. The digital transformation should be, let's say, anchored in a strategic foresight fitting the future. Where are we going as an organization? How do we want to become in 5, 10 years' time? And that's the strategic foresight. Again, as we say, we are not trying to automate existing processes or ways of working. We can do that. Many companies do that, but that I'm afraid that may be short-lived. And the bottom line here, why we need the strategic foresight? Because the world around us is changing. Are we changing? Are we changing enough? Do we have a vision of how the world is going to become or how our organization wants to be? And I try to at least put the foundation, the base, to be valid in the next 5 years or so. We know that technology changes at the speed of light. We know that. But the matter is not, we need to fit a certain technology solution. We need to put the foundations that with some agility, you see the word of agility, with some flexibility, it can be adapted to meet future developments down the road and future changes. Data use, data governance. This is also something very, very important. What is that organization's data governance strategy or practice? Who manages data as a corporate asset, as an organizational asset? Who manages that? If you tell me the IT department, I would say that is wrong. IT should be there, and IT has a strong voice and has the knowledge and should be there, of course. but this goes beyond an IT department. When we say data as a corporate, as an organizational asset, that spans the whole organization. And this is the essence, and this is the beauty of it. What travels across departments, what travels across silos, it is data and information, nothing else. And that's why, of course, different parties to the organization should have a say in the way to use and the way to govern data as an organizational asset. And the last competency domain, digital management and project execution. So when I said initially, what is digital transformation? For me, there are three key milestones. Why doing it? I say, why this topic? Why UNOC and UNESCO working on it? Why? Or why shall I, as an organization, embark on a digital transformation? Why? What is the case for change? What is the problem I'm trying to resolve? What is the need I want to fulfill? What is the vision that I need to accompany? So there is the why. And hopefully the why will convince the skeptics. The why hopefully will help avoid the resistance to the transformation. Number two, what? What are we transforming? What are the boundaries of the digital transformation? Where to start? Where to finish? An organization is a huge entity. You cannot transform the whole organization. And thirdly, the how. How to transform, how to make it happen. You see here the implementation, the planning, the execution. So let me summarize my message. For me, a digital transformation has three key milestones. Why transforming, what to transform, how to transform. And I think if we don't convincingly address the why, the what, and the how of a digital transformation, we may not be able to achieve the set objectives and ultimately to succeed. So there is one element at the bottom of this slide, the people centricity. As I said, we don't transform for ourselves. We don't create value for ourselves. We do it for people. We do it. I'm looking at my colleague across the table here. He comes from the private sector. He might say, yes, in our case, we translate that as customer-centric transformation. Because at his business corporation, he has customers. And any transformation should yield tangible results, tangible value to his customers. And we know about CRM, customer relationship management. How can I manage my customers in a way to make them happier, more than happier, to delight them, maybe to go beyond their expectations? Well, in government, it's the same. It's not CRM as customer relationship management, but it is CRM as citizen relationship management. It's still CRM. And that's the people centricity or citizen centricity. That is very much the recipient of the value coming out of the digital transformation. And I think that's very, very important. Let me, for the sake of time, because I'm, of course, supposed to leave time for discussion, and I'm sure with all your experiences and your expertise, you would like to contribute to our discussion and maybe to raise some issues. So let me try to see where I stand. This is the competency framework. I'm sorry that you cannot really read this slide. I was telling David before we started, we should have avoided the right-hand side of the slide and amplify the bubbles. But anyway, this is in the document we'll give you in the report as well. This is in a nutshell what I was explaining in detail in terms of the competencies needed to meet the challenges I started my presentation with. All right, so let me now go to the recommendation part. Yes. So we came up with these 9 recommendations. There are 3 clusters here. General recommendations on the left-hand side of the screen. Then recommendations on the right-hand side of the screen for governments, public sector entities. And at the lower part of the screen, a recommendation for private sector. We can go down these, but I think I did touch on many of these. I would maybe, so the first one, raise awareness around the competencies. Yes, I mean, and the awareness goes beyond the competencies. When I say why digital transformation? If you answer this why question clearly, you are you are increasing, you are raising the awareness of the people to understand what you are driving at. Number two, support governments in adaptation of AI and digital transformation competencies. And I stress it's not adopting, but rather adapting these competencies to the specificities, organizational, cultural context of the specific entity we are talking about. Of course, I mean, like our organization, UNESCO works worldwide. And what we do in Africa is different from what we do in maybe Europe or Latin America or Asia. So clearly, beyond geographical differences, there are key fundamental cultural, people, organizational issues that should be taken into account in adapting these competencies. Number three, make learning resources and training content openly accessible. Capacity building, of course, needs to have the right set of training material, of maybe educational material, in order to create a minimum skill level and minimum competency level. But number four, support governments in monitoring the impact of capacity building. Clearly, I mean, we need some indicators to see how effective or less effective we are in matter of capacity building and skilling of the workforce. Number five, foster cooperation. This is for me very important. Foster cooperation between international, regional, and national organizations. And I say to foster this cooperation may also include what I mentioned at the beginning, the multi-stakeholder approach. It's not just cooperation between us who look alike, who act alike. As you see, as we always say, there is a lot of enrichment through diversity. If we work with academia, if we work with maybe civil society, if we work public-private sectors, then I think the enrichment and the value add would be more important. For governments, recommendation number six, adopt a holistic approach toward digital transformation. This should not be, the approach should not be piecemeal approach, but should be really holistic. Sometimes they say, think big, start small, scale up fast. But think big first, have the full picture, have that holistic, that broad approach, even if you start rather small at the beginning, and you take it from there and you scale up fast. Number seven, develop capacity building programs and trainings. I already touched on this point. You see the role of academia here to develop, to design curricula and interdisciplinary programs for digital transformation related competencies. This is very important. Why academia? Because academia has been known of coming up with rigorous, relevant content. Everybody can come up with content, but how rigorous is it? It should not be shallow. It should stand on its feet. It should be defended in terms of why you are saying that. Where does it come from? Whether it's from research or from actual case studies and best practices. So academia can help really enhance the rigor and the relevance of the work. And with private sector, of course, private sector has a lot of experience and expertise that hopefully can share with public sector. Sometimes when it comes to digital or digital transformation, it's a fact of life. Public sector generally is lagging behind the private sector. And I'm looking at colleagues here from both sectors. So I hear the message or the recommendation, the public sector has a lot to gain by reaching out and working with private sector to learn maybe from their past experiences and not to make the same mistakes again. But you can learn from them and hit the ground running, hopefully. So this is, again, in a nutshell, the recommendations, which the report details to some extent. Maybe, can we move on to the next slide, please? Now, what you see here may surprise you a bit. We call these the communication assets, including social media assets. We have developed these social media cards with some key messages, with some press releases that we suggest to you, hopefully to help spread the word, disseminate the outcome of this report. So these are ready made. If you wish tomorrow, next week, to contribute to this communication effort and to the dissemination, these are available for you to use. And you see even the link the Trello link at the bottom of the slide, where you can have all of this for maybe further tailoring before diffusion. Let me, I think, go to the conclusion at this stage. First of all, by talking about the next steps. The next steps include what you see here. We are currently working with UNDP, ITU, and GIZ to develop what you call the digital navigator. What is this? It's a self-assessment and a learning resource suggestion tool. It's a tool that we believe can help organizations do a self-assessment based on the indicators we developed and the methodology, the competency framework that we developed. So I think that's a very important next step. Another equally important next step, the capacity strengthening initiative. So we want to develop material, trainings, workshops that we can make available to different parties in order to enhance the competencies and the skill sets of the people who want to be part of an AI digital transformation initiative at the national level. We are going to start disseminating our work at next month, actually in October 7. There will be in Portugal a major conference. You see here, it's called the International Conference on Theory and Practice of Electronic Governance. Several members of my team from UNESCO will be there to make a presentation to share the findings and the recommendations of this report. In conclusion, let me say that UNESCO is very much committed to the promotion of trustworthy, inclusive, and a human rights-centric AI innovation and digital transformation. This, as I said, has been our line of work for many, many years. We'll continue along these lines, and we believe the only way to sustain an AI digital transformation effort, the only way is to make it inclusive, multi-stakeholder approach, but very much anchored in the full respect of human rights, openness, and accessibility. And let me stop here and thank you for your attention, and I would like to give you the floor.